welcome everyone to another interesting week in Astro World. Um, Lots of things going on. Mike, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well. And you know what? I miss Astroworld. Astroworld was a
Dude,
big part of my youth. We were living down in the Laporte Clear Lake area, and yeah, we used to go to
nice.
Astroworld all the time.
Just a small aside. When I was in high school, I was 15 and I'd been cutting grass and doing whatever I could to make
Hmm.
money before that. That summer I went and I got a job at Astroworld, but I did not
Really?
take it. I did not take it because Astroworld was on the other side of town from where I live. We
Right?
grew up out near kind of near Spring area. Well, it was Guns Point before Guns Point. And yeah, I got a job at a Kroger, like literally 2 minutes from my house. So it was like either
Makes more sense.
drive back and forth to Astroworld, but yeah, I have
Right.
many fond memories of that crazy theme park.
Very
Um,
cool.
so let's dig right in.
Hmm.
First thing we need to talk about here is Spencer Arrighetti's
Yeah.
injury. Sort of a freak thing. Hit by a baseball when he was playing catch in the outfield, broke his
Right.
finger on his pitching hand. He's out at least 2 weeks. They get to skip him in the rotation at least this time around.
Right.
Let me explain to me that situation where you're playing catch and you get hit by a ball. That seems
Well,
crazy.
I'm not exactly sure what he was doing. The reports that I've seen is just that he was hit and he broke, I think, his thumb.
Yeah,
Um, which we don't know the severity of it.
right.
I don't know what kind of time frame they're looking at, but I would think, unless it's really ugly, I would think the thumb could be better than one of your index finger or your middle finger, just simply
Right.
because those are the fingers that you're actually releasing the ball with. The thumb is basically just holding the ball in place up until a release point. But it's still going to hurt. So we haven't seen a real time frame. Now, what happens? I mean, if this happened during batting practice,
Supposedly.
most of the pitchers that are standing in the outfield, quote unquote, shagging, you're paying very little attention to what's going on. Okay. You're not now there. I was someone that would actually power shag, which means I like to act like live my dream of being an everyday player,
Right.
and would actually use that as part of my conditioning. Tracking down fly balls.
Well,
But most
that
of the
was you.
pitchers are standing around, and usually somebody is paying attention, but every once in a while, one gets away, and unfortunately for Spencer, this one, caught him in the thumb and did break it. Again, we don't know. I don't know what the time frame is. I haven't really seen anything as far as that's
Yeah.
concerned. But we'll just have to wait and see. But this is one of the things that always gets me. You see people, home runs hit, you well
Mhm.
over 100 miles an hour, and you see, some small kid, or you see a dad holding a kid, or you see
Right.
people in the outfield just stick their hands up like, oh yeah, I'm just going to catch it barehanded,
Mm-mm.
when all these players are diving and dodging and dipping out of the way, dodgeball style.
Right.
uh
Dip, dive.
when these balls go at them in the outfield. I mean,
I
so,
just
and by the way, they're also wearing very expensive gloves that you
right.
could catch the ball with. And what do? They still elect to get out of the way. And these people just kind of stand there and wear it.
It's just to me is like two things that I think of when I think about this. First of all, somebody drilled his hand from the infield. Like the odds
Yeah.
of somebody hitting your hand when you're first of all, if you just held your hand up in the air still and had said, "Go ahead, hit my hand."
Right.
The
Right.
odds of someone hitting it are astronomical. If
Yes.
you're out there throwing the ball and like moving your
A la
hands around,
Sandlot. Just stick your glove up in
just
the air and hold it.
yeah, just insane. Just insane the odds. The other thing too though about this um when you're I'm just to me when I see this I think this was not your day. If you're getting hit by and it reminds me of the god who was the guy, was it Evan Longoria who caught the ball right in front of the reporter's face when they
Oh
foul
yeah.
ball. That famous, like, he's like, "Yeah, keep it
Mhm.
on the field, guys," or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, where was that? Where was he when Spencer Arrighetti was about to get clocked
Well, to
by a
tell you the truth,
baseball?
it happens. It happens more than you think it
I wouldn't
does.
surprise me. A lot
You
of
know,
baseballs being hit around.
I know when I was with the Yankees in the late '90s, our pitching coach was Mel Stottlemyre, and
Mm.
everyone loved Mel. Mel was awesome. Wasn't the greatest of pitching coaches, but great guy. Great stories, and he
Very
was a
well known
worker.
guy.
Yeah, yeah. Heavy sinker ball pillar pitcher when he was playing. Uh, and he was helping out at the bucket. So the bucket usually sits right behind center field or right behind second base. There's a big screen so you can get behind the bucket. But, as guys are not paying attention around the outfield, they also don't really pay attention to where they're throwing the ball. And the balls could be
Right.
scattered all over center field. And Mel had gotten out from behind the big
Mm.
screen that covered the bucket. And we were in Philadelphia, and there was a line drive, and it hit Mel in the face.
Ooh.
And I mean, and it
Mm-mm.
was bad. We were at the vet, and so all they did was open center field, and they actually brought the ambulance
Oh.
all the way onto the field. And needless to say, we did not play very well that night. We actually did not win. That was a throwaway game for us. So it does happen a lot more than you would expect.
Yeah.
Uh, but it also just shows how dangerous it is being at the
Oh.
ballpark.
It's crazy. Years ago when I was still, like, I don't know, teenager, playing baseball, and I was playing second base, and I decided to stick my leg out to stop a ground ball, right?
Been there,
And
done
I-
that.
and
Yep.
and it hit me in the shin, and I thought it snapped my leg in half. And this
Hmm.
was a bunch of kids playing
That's
baseball.
right.
It's like,
That's
and I
right.
had a knot on my shin. I was like, that's enough sticking the leg out,
That's right.
for that
I
to.
did that a couple times at balls up the middle, because my view of it was, well, you know what? Bruises heal, bones heal, but
Yeah.
outs are forever. So if I can get a ricochet and get to somebody, then
Right.
then I'll take it. But
Yeah.
the funny thing is when you don't do it, a lot of times you look completely ridiculous. You sticking your leg out in a funky angle, just trying to trying
Hey.
to
Yeah,
ricochet the
well,
ball.
baseballs are like unbelievably dangerous, and it's to me that, but the fact that he, like, got hit in the hand from that far away, it's just
Yeah,
honestly, you if some there again, the odds are so astronomical. I'd like to see somebody just hold a hand up sometime and see how many times you could hit it with a baseball if you're actually trying. I
right.
can't imagine. It's like those things when you, like, I'll be sitting around and I'll throw a pen in the air and it lands on its end. I'll never do that again. It'll
Right.
never in a million years happen.
Right.
It's just
You
pure
see
luck.
the clip on the internet of the kid. Apparently, it was a riveting game, whatever sport they were playing. The kid trying to flip the ball, the water bottle, and stand it up, and everybody went nuts.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and
exactly
then
right.
that's not high. That's not a very high percentage
No, that's not a
action
high
either.
one.
So yeah, listen, is there some bad luck involved?
Oof.
Absolutely, there is. And hopefully, for the Astros team, for the Astros fans, for all of us, that
Mhm.
Spencer, it's not anything serious. That's going to heal pretty
Yep.
quickly and get him right back on the mound.
Exactly. So next we got to talk about Rafael Montero. So our long
Yeah.
national nightmare is over. I saw somebody in the Athletic. I think the Athletic Bounce, which is their daily Major League Baseball newsletter.
Mhm.
They mentioned, and maybe it was either that or just their regular newsletter, where they said that when a couple of years ago, when they said Jim Crane said, "Let's do Jerry Jones except baseball," and we ended
Right.
up signing both Montero and Jose Abreu. Both did not work out well.
And you remember that was the off season that James Click
James
had been
Click had been
fired
fired.
right at
Yep.
the end of the regular season,
Yes.
and him and I think he was being assisted
Yes.
by Jeff Bagwell.
He was. That is
And
correct.
yeah, I think the Montero signing, I think was that might have been. I think James Click had something to do with that.
Well, it was after he had left. So when the signing happened,
Oh,
I don't
so it
know if he
was,
was
but I
actually
wonder if he was
involved, but
part of the negotiation or if that was
who knows?
a
But it was
you're
a
number
very
one
quick
on the way out the
trigger.
door.
it was a very quick trigger signing Montero too. It was like right after Click had left, all of a sudden he was signed. It was like the first
Right.
thing you're like, wait, what? And
And
so
that was a 35 million. What
yeah,
do you
well, it was
remember?
3 years. It was 11.5 million a year. So
Yeah. So
whatever
about
that,
35
about 35
ish.
million bucks.
Yeah.
So he gets traded to the Braves for the classic player to be named later. Essentially, this was the
Most
ability for
traded
the
player ever. I
yeah,
was traded for
exactly.
him once.
Where he really, what an honor. I'll tell you that I think the thing about this was I think we all know that this was a salary dump for the Astros.
Sure.
They are going to eat most of his salary for the Braves. They had already made him he was a non-roster invitee.
Right.
He cleared waivers and all that. They just needed to move. They needed to get him off the roster. And the biggest thing is, it does, even though they have to pay the money, it does remove that from the salary cap. Uh,
Sure.
and so
Sure.
it takes that luxury tax out of play, which they were only
And
about
it
2 million from
it
the
gives
commercial.
them some now because we know this roster going into the season. This was not a great
Right.
roster. This was not really a final roster. I think
Correct.
there were moves going into the regular season. You said, yeah, even if you got Dana Brown and you got him in a corner
Right.
and got him talking candidly, there's probably moves that they would want to make even now, not waiting till the trade deadline. So what
Right.
this doesn't do anything other than clear them financially to give them some flexibility later in the middle of the season towards the trade deadline. And
Right.
the thing is, is Raphael still a serviceable pitcher? Yeah,
Sure.
and you know what? He had a bad season last year, so he
Hmm.
very well may have a good season this year because that's kind of his trend.
He had a decent spring.
Yeah, he threw the ball well in spring. He did.
Yeah. I just think that what it boils down to is the Astros are doing a little bit of house cleaning here. They're freeing up a little bit of space. You're right on the money when you say that. I mean, this is not a finished product team at
Yeah.
all. It's interesting, Mike. One of the things when I really did start doing a deeper dive into baseball, I've been a baseball fan forever, but when I really did start doing a deeper dive into when I was doing more covering the Astros and then this
Hmm.
podcast and so forth, one of the things that really did surprise me because I knew plenty about the game itself, but I was unaware of a lot of the machinations of salary caps and things like that. I had
Yeah.
the general gist of it. But one of the things that really surprised me about baseball in general was how much player movement there is throughout a given season.
Sure.
And it certainly not the big name players necessarily without injury or whatever, but there are constantly deals being made
Oh
under the
yeah.
radar, guys moving up from the minor leagues, moving down, going on the aisle. There's so much activity, and more than I think in it maybe in any other sport.
Hmm.
And it's something that I don't think a lot of fans, you just don't see it because there's not a
Right. I mean,
reporting of every detail.
especially when you look at it as far as minor league movement, stuff like
Yes.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you do just big leagues, because we talk about these transactions as if it's just fly by night. This is something that happens
Right.
every day, and we don't really pay attention. But a guy being sent down to the minor leagues. Well, that means there's another transaction. Somebody has to come up and take his roster
Yep.
spot.
That's right.
There are so many different things that goes into orchestrating and manipulating a big league roster because for the young players, a lot of times you're looking at service time, you're looking at all kinds
Right.
of different things, and
It's
not just
complicated.
what is absolutely best for the big league club. It's unfortunate, and a lot of players, young players, don't realize this until they get a little later in their career. They get closer to free agency. They get a little bit of it going through the arbitration process. How ugly the business side of this really is, because it is a cutthroat business that you have to make. You have to make very difficult decisions in order to keep a team relevant, like the Astros that have been good for so long.
Yeah, it's wild watching all these transactions. And speaking of those, we've got now it looks like we're going to get some Ryan Gusto, the rookie who I think we're going to get to see him start. Remember, he was supposed to start last year in the final game
The
of the
last game,
season, which
yeah,
which
they
got
banged it.
rained out, and we've also
He should have got the day of big league time.
totally he
He
should have
should have
got the
got
day
the
of big
day.
lift for sure. So we got the other thing too is that Bennett Souza is coming back up. He's
Mhm.
been serviceable for the Astros, if not spectacular. The guy that's really interesting to me though is Hayden Wisniewski. He looks.
Yeah.
I Before the season started, I read a really interesting article about him because he was kind of like not really mentioned very heavily in the Kyle Tucker trade. The Kyle Tucker trade was mostly Isaac Paredes and
Right.
Cam Smith. But there was a really interesting story about how Hayden Wisniewski, first of all, the whole idea, every pitcher that comes to the Astros suddenly becomes a better pitcher. But the idea that his type of pitching would play particularly well in the Astros organization. He's a different kind of pitcher. He's not a huge power pitcher.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of interesting stuff. And he was a pretty good pitcher in Wrigley Field, which is not traditionally a great pitcher's ballpark.
Hmm.
So I've been impressed with him, but I also think, this was something the Astros may have seen coming.
Well, I think there's one other aspect that we need to at least discuss or at least mention is the fact that he just changed leagues.
Yeah,
That
that's true. Good point.
that's big for either hitter or for pitcher. For hitters,
Mm.
it's actually more of a hindrance than it is because now you have to, even though you play all 29 other teams, you don't get a really good look at other team's pitching staff.
Right.
You don't get even the National League pitching staff. So, I mean, you play somebody three times, you don't get a real feel. And so I think that's something that if he's throwing strikes, and especially if he's getting ahead in the count, he can he can manipulate the other lineups really before they even know what's going on. That's why we see the Astros are notorious for struggling against rookies because
Yes.
major league hitters, especially veteran major league hitters, do not like to face guys they don't have a track record against. That they don't know what the you can watch as much video as you want, but I don't know what his release point actually looks like in his delivery. I don't know what the spin of on his breaking ball, what it looks like. I may know what the shape is, but I don't know what it looks like.
Right.
How do I pick up the ball out of his hand? What kind of late movement might he have on his two seam fastball? That's all stuff that there's only one real way to figure it out, and that's just to be in the box
Right.
and see it. So yeah, I think there's some, but I don't want to take anything away from what he's done. Also, he has thrown the ball well. He has.
Yeah.
Is this going to last? Well, only time will tell. But at least he's gotten off to a good start.
Well, the Astros seem to pull this type of thing out of their hats anyway, most every
Yeah.
year. I mean, they seem to it seems to happen that just
Well, it's and
suddenly,
it's not and it's not by chance. And it's
right.
not
Yeah,
it's
sure.
also not a situation that, anybody can come into this organization and they can at least help them, if not make them much better.
Yeah.
It's a chosen few here and there. They have to have the right stuff. They have to have the right arm angle. They have to have the right mentality to be able to learn. And that's where I think the Astros have really excelled, not just in helping the pitchers that come over, but critiquing them before they do. To say
Right.
that Wesneski can be a throw in a trade for Kyle Tucker, and then actually make the big league roster, and as of right now, be a big contributor in the rotation.
Absolutely. And since we've covered how great the Astros are at handling their pitchers, can we discuss what's going on with their hitters? Because
Whew.
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
listen, I just want to point this out that currently they have one player hitting over 300. That's Jose
Hmm.
Altuve. The next best batting average on this team is Jake Myers at 280 and Brendan Rodgers right behind at 276. So very
Yeah.
positive from in the bottom of the lineup, right?
Mhm.
But when you consider that their best players, I mean, Christian Walker's hitting 156. Paredes is hitting, see, what, a 214. Jeremy Pena, who started off hot, now 154. Jordan's
Jordan. Yeah.
189. Um,
The phenom
that's
Cam
not good.
Smith is well below the Mendoza line.
Yeah, Cam is actually, after his hit last night, he is now hitting 143, a robust
He is definitely
143.
on the interstate.
Yeah, and so so to me, it's like, I know there's beginning of the season, the Astros do
Small
struggle
sample
to hit,
size. Yeah,
and the
small sample
Astros
size.
and they do struggle to hit. And by the way, I think Joe Espada did mention this the other day, and he's not wrong. The Astros have faced some pretty good pitching early this season.
Well, that's what
Maybe
you're going
more.
to see. That's what
Right.
you're going to see early in the season. You're going to see
Right.
everybody's aces. Everybody's got opening day. But there's also something to be said about coming out of spring training and going into the regular season. I think our last podcast, we talked about this with Cam Smith, that as great as he was in spring training, when you put the second deck on the stadium, things change.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, pitchers in spring training, you're not playing day games every day. You don't have the bright sun to help you see the ball. You don't have the pitchers on the other side. They're not working on things. Now they're trying to
Right.
get you out. And sliders have a tendency to be a little bit sharper. Fastballs have a little bit more hair on them. Got a little bit more movement on the ball. There's a lot of things that go on when you get into the regular season
Yeah.
that you don't see in spring training. And I think I also think that he's a guy that needs to be playing every single day. But I like what Joe Espada is trying to do with him, is trying to ease him into the big league life.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. But he's just a microcosm of this
Right.
team. And yet, listen, this has not been a great offensive team for a long time.
No,
I mean,
several seasons now.
yeah, I mean, you go all the way back to World Series years the last time they won the World Series, what did they do? That was the year that JV won the Cy Young. Did
Right.
not have a blow up start all year. I don't think he gave up more than 3 or 4 runs in any start.
Yeah.
Um, they pitched their rear ends off. That's how they won the World Series. It wasn't because of the offense. Now, we've always said that this has the potential of being a very dynamic offense, but again, coming out of spring training, this wasn't a great offensive team. The second half of this lineup, you could definitely see where there could be some holes and could be some issues. But even the top, I mean, there's if Altuve doesn't hit and Jordan doesn't hit, this team offensively is in trouble.
Yeah. And it's particularly interesting to me. Like I'm always fascinated by the team struggle dynamic. I
Mhm.
use and it's more so you don't see it like in football where there's so much together play, but in baseball and basketball you see it a lot where all of a sudden nobody can shoot,
Right.
nobody can hit. And
It's
it's always off.
contagious.
Yeah,
It's
it's always an
contagious.
offensive thing. It's almost like it's like a virus,
Sure.
and um it's always fascinating to me. I did think it was
Another
really
movie plug, The Natural, Sleep
yeah.
Bubonic Plague.
Yeah, the bubonic plague. That's right. I will say that I did think there were some interesting comments made about from the Astros about Cam Smith in particular, saying that they did notice he was moving his lower body a little bit more than he had in spring training. He also was a little bit farther away from the plate, so they get him up a little bit closer so he can. And of course, last night he hits a triple on a
Right.
sweeper, pitch that he had been missing, probably because he wasn't close
And it
enough
was
to
a
the
big
plate.
it was a big swing too,
It's a
because
huge hit.
Astros won 2-1.
Yeah, it
Fromber
was a
was
huge hit.
outstanding, by the way.
Yes, he was.
But
And
yeah,
so it's just a fascinating thing to me to see everyone sort of dip at once.
yeah,
And
and
every
it and
once in a
that's the
while.
and so can you put a finger on it? Well, I
Yeah.
mean, we're not in the clubhouse. We don't know what the behind the scenes conversations are. But when parts of the team struggle, what do you always say? Well, the other part needs to pick it up. Well, guess what? That ain't how it works. You can't
No.
just pick it up, and that's where you end up having a whole lineup struggle
Right.
because now all of a sudden guys are trying to do more than they can. You
Right.
know, you don't need Jake Myers to be Jordan Alvarez because if he
No.
tries, he's going to be well less than Jake Myers. You just need to be he just needs to be the best he can be,
Right.
and that's where you have that's where you have these struggles, and it's something that managers, hitting instructors, bench coaches, team psychologists, any other department you can think of
Massage therapist.
is yes,
We
that's
need a
right. Is
we
just
need a
telling them
live chicken.
that's
We need a
that's
live chicken. You get the
that's
curse
right.
off the glove.
That's right. We should have used a live chicken, not just fried chicken.
Exactly.
Um,
Uh,
but and so that's that pressure that is put on by especially one of your main bats not producing.
yeah.
You know, you can't let that put pressure on everyone else, but it's almost inevitable.
Well, I think also baseball is the one sport where the dominoes can fall a lot more easily. Like in basketball, one of the things that's helpful about that. Oh, shout out to the Rockets for getting the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Who'd have seen that come at the beginning of the year?
Right? No kidding.
Um, the thing about basketball is you can always play harder on defense. You can always play, you can
Sure.
always put more stress on the other team. But there's only so much in baseball you can do. I mean, you can pitch great and you can play great defense and you can still lose a 1-0 game. And so it is the one place where if you have one guy that's not doing well, the next guy just kind of dominoes down. And so that effect can be, it can be contagious.
Yeah.
After having said all of that, right? The Astros tonight win and they're 6-6. They're way better off than they were last year.
Oh my
They would have
gosh,
won.
yes.
They would have won
Yeah.
3 of their first 4 series, assuming they do win tonight at Seattle. Who can't? Speaking of can't hit,
Oh my
but
goodness.
it's just baked into who they are.
Yeah.
Not it's not a slump for them. It's what is it? It's not a bug. It's a feature of Seattle.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the Astros are sitting in a better place than they were last year, despite all of the poor hitting, despite all of the issues that have come up.
This is what they need to do. You need to tread water. And you can do this, to tell you the truth, you can do this all the way through the regular season. If you can get to September and you're 500, okay,
Yeah.
you
Well,
have you have a chance, because
in this
now if you go
division,
on a run,
right?
you've got a chance of not just making the playoffs, maybe winning the division. I
Yeah.
mean, look around the American League. The American League is not a great year, but a great league.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parity in the American League, and so that's what you're trying to do. You just don't want to bury yourself. Last year was that was an aberration. You
Yes.
that What
Completely.
happened last year, the bad start, almost double digits under 500 after like 5 or 6 weeks, and then you
Just
get back into
crazy.
it. It's ridiculous.
10
Now,
games behind.
how did they do that? Well, Seattle helped them out quite a bit. They got hot. The,
Yes.
the Astros got hot, but the Mariners stunk it up also. And this is who the Mariners are. I mean, they
Yes.
run some incredible arms out there to start the games, but those
Yeah.
guys aren't pitching nine, and their offense has it's as suspect as it always has been. So,
Yeah. Well,
and
and
what
let's
we need to talk a little bit about what Fromber did last night. Fromber was very,
yes.
very good. He's 2 out of 3 now in his starts.
Right.
Opening day start was very good. This start was very good. He had the stinker in the middle, which is that's just Fromber.
Yeah.
But we need to. I mean, it was a 2-1 baseball game. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know last year did they win a game when they did not, a 1-run game that they did not score at least 4 runs last year? If they
That's a
did, it was only a couple.
it's a really good point.
Yes,
That
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 is
is one.
something that does not happen very often. That, and
Well, they struggled in.
they also had a 6-run deficit there
Yeah,
in
and came
Minnesota,
back.
which is also doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often.
They struggled in one-run games, period, last year. They were
Yes.
not good in those games. They were not good in comeback
Which
games.
that's a dumb stat. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
you're just good enough to lose by one. I
Well,
mean,
but there's also I will say this one though. The Astros were what were they? They were like 1-6 last year in extra inning games. I mean, they
they've
were
always been
terrible.
terrible.
Yeah, well, this year they're
There's
one one
ever since
already.
they've done the ghost runner at second base, this team has not been good in extra innings.
And yet they won there too. So they've
That's
had
right.
some they've won in some situations where they probably wouldn't have been expected to win in other
Right.
maybe last year. And that's something. And listen, does anybody think that the Angels and the Rangers are going to keep up like a 675 pace
Oh
for the
gosh,
season?
no
Like, I
chance.
mean,
No
it's
chance.
just not going to
That's
happen.
where the treading water, you know,
Exactly.
what's the water saying? Water will find its level.
That's right.
Right now they got things rolling. Now, I mean, you look at what the Rangers did a couple years ago, and they
Sure.
win the World Series. Okay, but again, that was an aberration. You know,
Agreed.
so yeah,
Agreed.
you just keep them in shouting distance and just play
Yes.
your game.
I
Leave
always
Leave it up to the fools like you and me. We'll talk about where we are in the standings, and we'll
Right.
talk about the roller
Exactly.
coaster. What are the players doing? Just go out and play, dude. Just go out and be who you are. Win some
Exactly.
baseball games until you get hot, because everybody gets hot. The
Yeah.
White Sox at some point will be hot, and you don't want to
That
play them
happens.
right then, because it may be for a series, it may be for a week, maybe 10 days, probably not any longer than that. But if you just happen to be on the schedule, and those are games that everybody else would win, but since you've got them and they're hot, now all of a sudden you're struggling against them.
I always liked the sort of metaphor that people would use where Tiger Woods, and we've got the Masters coming
Masters,
up, so we
yeah,
should talk. So Tiger Woods, his strategy, I always thought was fascinating. His goal was to just be in contention. He
yep,
didn't need to lead. He would just be just stay on the leaderboard
that's it.
somewhere near the top, and then make his move on Sunday.
Till he gets,
And
yeah,
not just make his move, but something else that and I saw an interview with him years ago. He said he believed that guys would come back to
yes.
him, that he didn't necessarily have to overtake anybody, that when he got to Sunday, there would be guys that would start to move backwards and he would start to move forwards. And that's
Sunday
Sunday.
is a hard day to play, especially when you have arguably the best golfer to ever pick up a golf club chasing you. When
Yeah.
he is in your rear view mirror, and tell you the truth, as hard as Major League Baseball is and has always been, golf is way harder
Oh,
because you
God.
don't have a teammate. You don't have anybody to help you. Okay, you got your caddy there, and he's a sports psychologist in his own right, but it's just you.
You
And
know,
and 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 some of these shots that these guys can take, especially now. I mean, when Tiger was in his heyday, it was Tiger and it was the rest of the field.
right.
Well, that's not the
Nowadays,
case anymore. Oh my
no,
gosh, man,
nowadays,
there
right?
are so what did Tiger always do? Tiger had length over everybody.
Right. Not
These
anymore.
guys are hitting the ball just as far, if not farther, than Tiger did
Oh,
even 15 years ago.
forget it. Scotty
And there's
Scheffler's
and
twice
there's
as long.
there's and there's multiple of them.
Oh, yeah. And
So
I saw a 16-year-old women's golfer the other day hit an insane shot from the rough.
yeah,
And I'm like, are you kidding? Listen, I've hit a golf ball a few times in my life, but I don't really play because I'm not that big of a glutton for punishment.
right.
I would
It's a
I
brutal
I
sport.
would be the guy on the
It is
video
a
that
brutal
snapped his driver in
sport.
half and threw it into the woods. Like
It is a brutal sport.
I would not want to be that guy. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. Any thoughts on the upcoming weekend, Mike? I know we got the Masters. Unfortunately, the Cougars are out, and I didn't fall apart as I did in 1983, but nevertheless was
The
quite
best team to
disappointing.
never win a
Oh,
championship.
oh, so
Phi
brutal.
Slamma Jamma. Oof.
And look, the Astros play the Angels, and the Angels are leading the division right now against all odds. It's
Yeah.
kind of an interesting weekend in sports.
It is. It is. And, congratulations to the Cougars for an
Absolutely.
absolutely remarkable run that they went through, especially the March Madness run in
Yeah.
the tournament. Unfortunately, and my gosh, I was in the batting cages in that second half. I mean, they dominated for 3 quarters of that game. I think their highest was a 12-point lead,
Yeah.
but it
No, they
showed
were
why
up
Florida
12
was
in the
really
second
there.
half.
Yeah,
They were up.
Florida was that's a good team.
Yeah, and look, Florida came back in every single game in the March Madness during the
Yeah,
tournament. It was just I and here's the thing. I picked Florida and U of H as my championship in my
really.
bracket. I did. I had Florida and U of H, but I had U of H winning. So my bracket ultimately did bust. But this was a very strong Final Four. When you look at, they have some metrics, they rank them. There's the Ken Palm metric where they try to, over the course of years, they will look at
Yeah,
all the teams and balance it
compared all
out.
of them.
And basically, the final four teams in this were the best Final Four grouping ever. So I
Yeah.
mean, and just in terms of their skill set and their wins,
Well, and you didn't have a dominant team all year.
no,
You
a,
know,
you
this
had
was
a
we
number
talked
of
about parity in the
yeah,
American League. There was definitely parity in
And
college hoops. That
a number of really, really good teams. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if Texas Tech beat Florida. They were really close
yeah,
to beating them. There were a number of teams in this tournament that had a shot, and the Cougars won them. Just fell a little bit short. It's all right.
yeah.
That's all.
So,
It's
but
all
still,
good.
it's still a remarkable season. Those guys have
Absolutely.
nothing to hold their head down about. Um, you
And the
know,
best
you know,
college basketball
they
program
got
in America.
cold. They got cold at the worst possible
They
time.
did.
That was down the stretch.
Yeah, best college basketball program in America too. Kelvin Sampson has totally transformed a moribund, I love that word, program at University of Houston. There was a great story in the Houston Chronicle a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't seen it, go look it up, about how Kelvin Sampson and his daughter, when no one was coming to games, when they first got hired, he would go around campus and he'd say, "We got to get you to the game," and he'd fist bump at people and he'd go, "Okay, that's it, you're coming. If you fist bump me, you got to come." And he just went. He
I
went to
like it.
classroom after classroom after classroom, and just basically went, put his feet on the pavement.
Right.
And that's just a testament to what a great coach he is, one of the all time greats. So go Cougs next year. And of course, this is it for I want to see the Astros whoop up on the Angels this weekend. I would love to see them take out a little punishment
Sure.
on that other Los Angeles
Well,
team.
and here's the thing. They've always played well there
Oh,
in
yeah.
Southern California. So, even though you've got a team that's playing hot right now in the Angels, you don't it doesn't scare you because you've had so much success in that stadium. So you go in, there's a calming factor. Now, even if you don't know exactly what you've done in the past, there's a calming factor when you've played well as a visitor
Well,
in
in
a
this
stadium.
case, they're playing in Houston, so even better.
Oh
But I
wait,
mean, when you
oh, I thought they
when
were okay. Never
yeah,
mind.
but here the thing is
I had
the
the schedule
Angels
wrong.
all the Angels have done right now is play the White Sox, the Cardinals, and the Guardians.
Yeah.
So let's all back off on any big high
I mean,
hopes of the Angels.
maybe a subject for a different podcast.
Yeah,
Would you rather them play in LA or would you rather them play here in Houston?
that's a good question. As that matters, I
Because
look at it.
they have always been a better road team
I almost
you go all the way back to 2017
and by the way,
when they changed center field.
I came this close to saying Minute Maid just now too. Got to put a dollar in the tip jar for
That's
Dyken
right.
Park.
That's
All right,
right.
thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. We will talk to you guys next week. As always, go Astros.
Adios.
And we are out.
Oh yeah,
Thank you, sir.
had the schedule wrong.